Hello and welcome back to the Questions of Fire Weekly podcast with Jonathan McGuinness here. I'd like to welcome all of the new members. We have a fantastic podcast every Wednesday evening with very dynamic people, and in particular I'm looking out for driven people. Our next guest is somebody who I have known actually for a long time, even though we haven't interacted that much over time. And I was delighted to meet with him and actually have a good conversation with him the other night, and I'm, to be honest, heartfelt impressed by his heart and his attitude. He's currently living in Dubai. He's originally from Ireland, and please let me introduce you to Fintan Flannelly. Welcome, Fintan, to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and it was great chatting to you the other night, and that is a big welcome from yourself as well. A very heartfelt conversation we had the other night, so great contacting you again.
Absolutely. What I really want to say about it, Fintan, is, I know your story more from the update really than from before, even though we knew each other before. And what I liked about all the things that you've been through now, that we could say where you are now is you're in one of the most fantastic cities in the world, in Dubai, working in real estate, which is kind of a special industry all on its own, which is also the temperature of the economy of any country and also of the world. How did you come from, County Wicklow all the way to the point of, deciding to live in one of those cities, bring your family and explore this option? Many people dream about doing this type of thing, but you've taken that chance. What reason did you do it, Fintan?
I suppose going back to where we started from an early age, my ambition in life was not to be an astronaut or a fireman or a superhero. It was to be an accountant and join my father's accountancy practice. Okay. Again, that's where we met each other. But there was a few twists and turns in life, and we had a family business which was surrounding equestrianism. So I eventually swapped horses for houses, and all roads led here. We had our own business in Ireland for 10 years, from 2005 to 15, myself and my wife. Yeah. And I don't know, there was just something there that was like, there's something more. We were, okay, use the word, we were comfortable. There was nothing wrong with our lives. We had a good life with it. But I think when you are comfortable, that's a time where you've got to question yourself. And I suppose that's where we were at. We just thought there was so many factors in Ireland, and we'd come through the worst after the years after the Celtic Tiger crashed. We had come through the worst. We didn't have to go, and I guess that's a good place to actually make a decision. Positive decision is when you don't have to do something, you want to do it, and that's where we started exploring our options.
That's fantastic. I've traveled a lot, as you know, and I've lived in many countries now at this stage. And there's a lot of stereotypes about why people move, and usually the first two stereotypes, it's love or money. So for a girlfriend or a boyfriend or for a job. And then the third one, I got surprised. I think I was in Oslo in a nightclub, and I was talking to somebody, and she said, no, I'm a refugee. So love, money, or escape from war. And you're not one of those three. You actually were at a point of being able to make a decision consciously, and you weren't getting away from something or attracted. So, that's kind of a special case, Fintan, and I would say a privileged position in some way.
Well, I never looked at it that way before, and you're entirely right. And compared to yourself that has traveled and is worldly wide, I'd lived in the same town. We'd moved down from, Dublin to Kildare. I'd been living there for 20 plus years. We were married. Our daughter was 5. I was 44 and never experienced living in another country. But I think I've always had this kind of thing, is that if something doesn't feel right, it's not right. And if you have a graw, which is an Irish word for love, and this thing for doing something else, I love what we do. I love real estate. I love working with people. I love trying to help people get from the point they are now to the end goal. But Ireland, there were so many factors outside of our control. We had come through the worst. And this was
Sure.
another thing I probably dawned on. We didn't have to go, but at the same time too, I wasn't getting to where we wanted to go. And Ireland is a magnificent place. As you said, very privileged to have the education, and a country like Ireland to, that's where my values come from, my parents.
Sure.
Privileged and love it. But, if there's things out in your work situation or your life that are outside your control, and things like if the banks aren't lending or developers aren't building, or what can I do? There's a ceiling there that you can only go so far. So, we came over here as a result of my brother-in-law. One night, we were nearly moving to England, and one night he said to me in a bar in Bristol, where he came down to see where we were planning to move to. He said, "Are you planning to retire?" And we said, "No." He said, "Where this is gorgeous. It's lovely, and I could see you retiring here." And I said, "No, we're not retiring." And he introduced the idea of Dubai, and then it grew legs, and as I said, all roads led here, and we've never looked back.
So, like you told me a little bit the other day, Fintan, and this is very interesting because I'm probably of the embrace change and maybe go ahead and test out on the job rather than go and test and then do something. I think the one thing I do is I always go ahead of the family, make sure everything's in place and whatever. For other people, you took what I call a very practical approach to deciding about it. Tell me how you decided, for not just you, but also because you have a family, how you made that transition or made the decision to make that final transition to a new country.
I suppose, first of all, when you're in Ireland and you're 44, we'd looked at Australia previously.
Yeah.
You're actually quite restricted. You're quite restricted where you can go in the world and actually continue the career that you're in real estate. We had our own real estate agency for 10 years. So you're quite restricted, because now we have our daughter. We've got a consideration of grandparents. So if we go to Australia, the reality is she's going to grow up not knowing them. They're not going to travel, and I'm not going to sacrifice. I'm not going to sacrifice that. When we looked at Dubai, I'd never traveled to the Middle East before. I never lived here. One of the ladies who owns the company I work for, Exclusive Links Real Estate Brokers, in one conversation with her, she said, "You've got to come to Dubai for a week without your daughter and get a feel for the place." Now, my daughter was 5, Ben was 5. We had never been away from home more than 2 nights away from her. But we came for a week. And that week was this feels right. And was it a gamble? I'm 44. I'm not saying it's last chance saloon, but if an opportunity presents itself, I didn't want to be looking back in 5 years' time in the same place, in the same town, in the same situation, which I knew I would be in, looking and asking the question, what if?
Okay.
So it was important to have a fallback situation. What happens if we go there and we don't settle and we don't like it?
Yeah.
We can always go back to where we were before in Ireland. We have our home there, we have our family there, and that is a great place to be. So I don't know that it was a risk. Did I go into it a little bit naive? Did I understand how different the real estate world works here compared to home? Possibly. But when you land here and you're in a commission-only role, supporting a family, you learn to swim fairly quickly.
So that's a very interesting. Absolutely, you swim or you drown, I guess, Fintan. What's very interesting is,
or you use the return. Or else you use the return flight home very quickly, and said it was a nice holiday.
Absolutely, an expensive one, I imagine.
Well, in fairness, we only bought a one-way ticket, so it was going to work.
So you burnt the boats behind you, as I say.
Yeah, absolutely, gone. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And how is, there's a lot of my connections would be in Europe, and Ireland and Europe. Okay, there's a lot of differences, but they're much more similar than Middle Eastern countries. What sort of cultural differences? And you can use real estate as an example of how people behave, how they interact with each other differently in terms of, just I don't know, like in Ireland, terms of time, people are not necessarily always exactly on time, but if they say something, generally they do it, or will they back out on it, or
No, okay, here is, sorry, sometimes when you're meeting people here in this part of the world, if you think
yeah,
Ireland, sometimes people aren't on time. Well, I'll tell you,
yeah,
they're very punctual. They're very punctual compared to here.
okay,
You know, when you have an appointment, sometimes, when they're meant to be there, they'll just say, "Yeah, I'll be there in an hour." You ring them, "Are you nearly here?" So,
mm-hmm.
I listen. The thing here is there's 92% of the population, which is just over 3 million, is expat. Okay, so
Okay,
you are getting east, west.
3%.
It is so many nationalities here. Um, I suppose what you have here is then, do people act in a different way to home? One thing that I have noticed is if you're in your town, in your home place, you will,
Mm-hmm.
because you've got family around you, you will act appropriately because you've got a family name. Some people here, people are um, anonymous, so they can act in ways that
Okay,
they might not act. Now that could be, uh, you could be working with somebody and give them the best advice in the world, and they might go off to the next person. Now that's business, but here, it, I think for a lot of people, it's a lot more transient. So people
okay,
don't see longer term relationships as being the norm, because especially in real estate, the truth is of real estate here. A lot of people work in real estate here because there's low barriers to entry to becoming a real estate broker. It's a commission only role, so companies will recruit people that may not be appropriate for commission only roles. They may not be appropriate for actually advising people. They may not have a passion for real estate. Um, there's some very, very good brokers, no doubt here, that are very knowledgeable. Um, but you see some people stepping into real estate as a means to getting a visa to stay in Dubai and live here, thinking that it's easy money, and it's hard graft, you know.
So I have an idea, Fintan, and this would be just a general idea that, when people are normally dealing with property, your property broker or property manager, if you're a landlord as well, tend to be almost
Yeah,
lifelong partners or long-term partners, like having a lawyer or like having an accountant.
yeah,
You're giving the impression that that doesn't reflect the general norm in Dubai.
yeah. I think, yeah, 100% on that. I think most people see it transactional, and I suppose what real estate is, real estate agents across the world probably don't have the best reputation. Let's be honest. Everyone thinks
Okay,
they're out for the commission. Whereas I come from the other way. I'm always about the relationship. I'm always about the advice. I'm always about following the process. And if that ends in a client buying a property, well, whatever follows in terms of payment, that's as a result of doing the process. So a lot of people here will they'll put the focus on the commission first, and
mm-hmm.
accordingly advise the client that will get them to the most commission in the quickest time, which is,
Sure,
it's frustrating because this is my career. I've been doing this for 15 plus years. It's my
yeah.
profession. And I suppose when I came here, it was one of my bugbears with, you know, how other people operated here. I was going, this is not right. But then I learned to accept that these are the rules of the game here. And if that's how people operate, that they see things in the short term, and I get it too. There's some people here that's commission only. They have to pay their bills at the end of the month. They don't have
Sure.
the luxury of investing in a long-term relationship with a client. But if that's the majority of how the brokers are here, well, I can use that to my advantage and turn it around. Because, you know, if I'm half good at what I do compared to the others,
Yeah.
I'll look like I'm Premiership compared to
Oh,
what they're doing. So you can turn that around on its head, and rather than being frustrated with how the game plays. My clients that are coming back, we spoke today. How was my day? I'm literally just home having a cup of Barry's Irish Tea here now. My first meeting this morning was a client that bought me a number of years ago. I sold a couple of properties for them. They're coming back to me now. They're looking for investment advice. We're sitting down over a cup of tea and cake as if we're friends, discussing their plans. My last appointment before I left the office, again, somebody who bought me a couple of years ago, sitting down, discussing the plans. Now, that gives me great satisfaction to know that 4 or 5 years on, I'm their go-to person and they refer people to me. And I think that is unique because a lot of people that work in real estate, this is not a, okay, you could say I fell into real estate. I did accounting and finance degree. I did my accountancy, my professional exams. I took a U-turn and ended up in property. So I end up here by default. And I think for a lot of people, they end up in real estate and property, not by design, but by some twist of fate along the way.
Sure. I have a very good guy, I'll call him a quasi-mentor that I listen to now again, and he's actually in the coaching world, Fintan, and he says if you build relationships, you get long-term clients. If you do transactional marketing, like landing pages, advertising, you just get transactional clients, so you never see them again. So I think the idea of building long-term relationships and community, you build an ecosystem, an economy, and everything within that long-term is much more valuable than maybe the short-term hit that you could get for doing those, we say, other types of transactions, I guess.
Yeah, I think if you're going into a relationship looking for something out of it, you're starting in the wrong mindset. You go in there to actually advise and help the other person get to where they want to go. And if you do a good job and you're genuine and you're sincere and you've got any kind of integrity about you, people see that and they value that. So for most parts, it will come back to you time and time again. Like today now, these clients that have come back to me, and I don't say this, I know that they will be exclusive with me. And in this part of the world, compared to at home, when you get an exclusive listing, that means something. Here people say they've got an exclusive listing, and if somebody else comes in with another offer on the property while it's exclusive with you, they'll bypass you, because a lot of people don't value the longer term relationship. But just on one note, I came to my head now, and sometimes in life, you end up being where you're meant to be for whatever reason. And, I went to school in Gerrards and Bray, just up the road on the top of the hill from you. And in all the years that I did accountancy, I had my mind fixed on going in one direction. We did a project at school, and it was a project for home economics of all things. And all these years later, I remember this. My project was on floor plans, building a house and financing a house at the age of 15. Right?
Yeah.
It's the only headmaster's prize I ever won, and they thought it was so good that they showed it to the Board of Governors. Now,
fantastic.
It only took me about another 20 years to actually come back to realizing that was my passion in life.
So you're just making me think, Fintan, because we're both fathers, isn't it maybe very important whatever projects teachers give our kids, because maybe that's the pinging or the calling for what their future might be if they're let have free reign on it.
Absolutely. I mean, I would love if I had that project now, because I can even remember, like, this is now, okay, the guts of 35 years ago. And I can remember as clear as day of doing the floor plan of the house, going through the build structure, and actually going down to the Bank of Ireland and the AIB banks in Bray on the main street to get leaflets for mortgages. So I think what you've got, people know themselves. There's a perception there at an early age. The right thing to do is follow my father's footsteps, become an accountant. And if you say something to yourself long enough, guess what? You believe it.
Yeah.
And in saying that and telling yourself, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm going to do, you find yourself backed into a corner that you just do it. And I suppose if there was anyone that takes anything out of my story, is it's never too late. And, you know, don't be someone that says, okay, had I not made the move here, I'd be in Ireland now, doing the same thing that I was doing before, which is very comfortable and privileged and everything. I recognize that. But I'd be sitting there going, in the middle of lockdown, what if? And for me, life is not about what ifs. I wouldn't have met so many fantastic clients from around the world. The experience I have. My daughter's in a school with 14 different other children from different countries around the world. She's growing up in an environment. Here is a bubble. This is not the real world, but she's growing up in an environment, and she doesn't see the difference between color, creed, and everyone is the same, which is a beautiful thing, you know.
I have a question around that because obviously, as you know, I have 4 boys as well, Fintan. What your dad, I don't know whether he implicitly did it or explicitly did it, you know, have the expectation of you gone into accounting. How does that make you pay attention to your daughter and what her desires for the future might be differently than what happened in your family? I know I have my story, but I'd be very curious because of you mentioning it. How do you think you're going to try to capture what you think you can encourage versus also balancing that with wanting her to have an economic stability and all of the normal things within life? How's that changed your perception being a dad? And I know she's coming up on the age where those things are going to probably start to, you know, be part of the conversations you're having with your wife, etc. about that.
Yeah, like, it's funny you say that. Fen is 11, and on the breakfast counter the day he said, "What do you think you'd like to do when you grow up?" Okay.
Yeah.
By the time I was 11, everyone knew what I wanted to be because I had pre-programmed myself, and that's what I was going to be. And I suppose the best thing that came out of Fen's head was, I don't know, because she's finding her way. She's 11, and there's things she like. And I said, "Would you like to be a vet?" She goes, "No, I wouldn't like to be a vet. It's too bloody and gory." She loves animals, and I think we just got to, I suppose, as parents, is nurture the things they love. She's very creative. She's very musical, and I think, you know what, I would have been better off nearly going to late in school, not knowing what I wanted. Yeah. Because if I had entered into that age of 15 that I did that project without that preconceived thing of what I wanted to be and what I was going to do, maybe I would have been doing what I was doing now an awful lot earlier. But this is my road, and this is my journey, and you know my story about my mum. Had that been the case, I wouldn't have been able to spend time with mum at a time that was very special in our lives while it was a sad time. So for me, that was my life journey. I wouldn't change a thing because I got to meet, going down this route, my wife. We have a beautiful daughter. So what would I say to her? Be yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and just having those pillars of support as parents of whatever she is, whatever it is that she wants to do. There's a saying: find something you're passionate about doing, and you'll never work a day in your life.
Absolutely.
And whilst money is important, you know, money in itself, what if you're not happy? I think there's a lot more to it. I mean, you got to enjoy your journey of what you're going. I can talk back here now and laugh and say, God, when I was stuck in accounting and finance exams doing tax and auditing, I'd rather been sticking needles in my eyes, but I persevered in it. And I look at that and go, why did you do it? You know?
Yeah.
You know, but because of where I am now in my life, I don't regret it. At the time, I was like, oh, that was a waste. What about you? I mean, with your boys, how do you support them, or how do you nurture them? Just support them? Do you guide them?
It's kind of funny. I'm passionate about, or have even been since I was 8. I was a guy on a computer with a Commodore VIC-20, and I went to college. I originally started with business, and that was a place where we met. I left that because it wasn't for me, and I couldn't. Just didn't sit with me because it was.
Yeah.
It was actually what someone else wanted from my parents, from my mom actually, and
Yeah.
so I decided. Hold on now, who am I living my life for? And in a way, you want to live for your family, but you also want to find yourself. So I took a break, and then I went back and I did physics and computers. So I actually loved what I did. And for a long, long time, it moved on in a different way. But as being a dad, I've had the privilege of going around the world with the kids and talking to them. And,
Wow.
I always want them to do whatever they want, but I have a passion about how things work, physics and maths, and I love it. And we all do the cube. We're a bit of a weird family in that sense. But so I said, always do what you want, and I'll always support them. But the first two happen to be going in similar directions. So I'm wondering if my enthusiasm just for what I love was part of inspired them. But it was definitely, if you want to do art, you want to do acting, you want to do anything, but they also, those two older ones are coming in that direction. The two younger ones are still in school. So, I would support whatever, but that's the way it kind of went, Fintan,
But you've said something there that I think is very important. They've seen you and see how passionate and how much you enjoy what you do and how you're happy doing it. Who wouldn't want to aspire to that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay? Because as I said, I mean, you've written up there, start with the destination. For me, when I'm with a client, getting them to a place that they're satisfied. One of my guys on the team today, he did a transfer. The sale concluded, and he got off the phone and he was so ecstatic, and I could just feel his energy. I says, something, these are the days, aren't they? These are when you see that client's face and they're getting the keys off their first home. Aren't they the days? So his destination is to give his client a great service. Okay, I'll tell you where his destination. He came to me. He'd been here for about 14 months in Dubai with other real estate companies. He got messed about. He'd been 7 years in the UK. This was his profession. And he was himself and his partner were about to throw the towel in on Dubai because they've been messed around with companies, not getting them visas, whatever.
Sure.
And I asked him, in the first time I met him, I said, "Why are you here?" I said, "I'm looking to see, are you taking on people?" And I said, No, why are you here in Dubai? Tell me why are you here? And he said, "Well, I've worked all my life in England, worked my way up, managing a branch." He said, "But I'll never be able to get a deposit in that environment to buy a house in the town we want to." So he attached his motivation that came from within was to buy the home in the town that he's growing up in, where he lives. The environment he was in, that was not possible. 6 months, not even 6 months ago, 5 months ago, 4 months ago, he joined us. And eventually he was on the verge of, Dubai is enough. Okay. I said, "You've got it. Don't compromise. Think long term." And he's done a transfer today for a couple buying their first property. But he's also done a sale for a property in Dubai Marina for 10.5 million dirhams. And to investors that came in. And he is somebody who deserves it because he knows what he wants at the end. It's something real. It's something meaningful to him. He's not motivated by money. He's motivated by what that money can do for himself and his family for the future.
Well, it almost sounds like Fintan, every time he helps a client, he's almost getting a preview of himself getting his own keys when he achieves his goal.
Something, I think that's very true. He sees that and he feeds off that energy and he says, that's going to be me one day. So, but as I said, Dubai is, I think a lot of people have a misconception of Dubai. Now that we're talking, they see Dubai the biggest, the best, the tallest. But like Michael and Anna have come over here, no more than myself and Bronny, to have another chapter in our life, to experience something new. But also, we know what we want in terms of real. I know I want to give Fen the best opportunity in the world. I want to show her that the world does not exist in a town with a population of 22, 25,000.
Yeah.
And as I said, we've grown up in that environment. There's nothing wrong with that environment.
Mm-hmm.
But the world is changing and the world is becoming smaller. And I think for your kids to have you and your story and what you've done as a family, you know, we're not here for forever, but they will be left with the most amazing times and memories and stories that you'll be able to look back on. And for me, coming to Dubai with Bronny and my wife and Fen, you know, be able to say to Fen, what's your favorite holiday? And she goes, Thailand. I loved going around on the tuk-tuks. Yeah. Or to Zanzibar, or the Maldives, or a road trip in the car to Oman.
Yeah.
Or gone skiing in Azerbaijan. With 4 families that we never knew until a number of years ago, and they are now our support system here. Now, if you were to tell me that 5.5 years ago, before I left Ireland, this would be the future for the next 5 years,
yeah,
I would have said, I don't know what you're smoking, but I really don't know. But that is some wild, wacky stuff you're telling me. But that's how it's all played out. And I don't know that do I have a guardian angel up there looking after me, pointing me in the right direction? I don't know, but I'm very fortunate and blessed. And again, it wouldn't be possible without people that have clients that have connected with me, the company I work with, my colleagues, the owners of the company that allow me just to get on and do what I do best.
So I have this is one of my own thoughts, Fintan. I think we've touched on the subject slightly. One of the things that allowed me to sort of take risks or go to other countries or work with clients I may never have known before is this belief, and we can call it a type of faith, a faith in myself and a faith in the universe that I can find a way, even if there's a problem, even if there's an obstacle that comes up. You know, I'm in Malaysia last year, Thailand the year before, or whatever. And they're completely unknown culturally, business-wise, in every sort of way. But that belief, and I actually want to tell a little story here, and it's probably a big strength, and it's thanks to my father. My father and my mother actually emigrated to London, and that was their story, and then came back to Ireland, and we grew up in Ireland, etc. So they know about going away, but in a very different way than we do, because people go away now on a flight and they come back. Yeah. And my father, when I was young and started going away, he would cry like he would never see me again, which was fantastic in a way. But, you know, my heart was breaking for him as I'd be at an airport or wherever I would be. And I was heading to London, I think, for the very first time. I was 19. And he said, Jonathan, if you ever get stuck, you're broke, just pick up the phone. And if you don't even have the money for the phone call, call collect and I'll get you a flight or a boat home. Now, what that meant to me, that one phone call, that one sentence, Fintan, said, you've like you said, you had a secure position to fall back into. Just knowing that I could make a phone call without any money would allow me the confidence to take those extra risks. And giving that to our kids, like just saying, you know, wherever you are, no matter what the case is, it allows us to happen. You build a faith in yourself. And now that's my story, but you've obviously taken a risk and you've prepared to do something. So you must have built a sort of faith in yourself in some way in order to do that. You know, that's my one. And your one somehow is, because not everybody does. 99% of the people don't do that, Fintan. So I'm just curious to, what is it that keeps you strong?
One, I know, and my wife and myself know, that once we're together, nothing is impossible. I mean, that's the first thing. In doing this, I have a lifelong friend. I've got a number of them, but there's one in particular. And for all the years, he was the one saying, get out from the family business. You've got to do your own thing. You've got to do your, and you know something, after what, 20 plus years, I eventually listened to him. You know? But you know something, that was a test of friendship, because we know each other. From the time we had our first sleepover was in his house, and he had gone away and traveled, and he was saying, Fintan, do it. It's the best thing for you. You know, you need to get away from home, Ireland, travel. Okay. And he probably didn't think it was going to happen. But until I rang him one day and said, listen, I've got this. And he gave me every support to say, yeah, do it. Family were, I suppose some of the family probably, okay, we opened up a real estate agency in Ireland in 2005. I'd never worked a day in real estate in my life. You know, that's not normal. But I saw what other people were doing within the industry. And there was just this belief. We see how they operate. And I have to say, largely to my wife, she's the real estate rock star in our family, in fairness. And I worked beside her for 10 years. And I saw how she handled clients. And I listened to her and the conversation she had. And our office in Clane resembled a crossover between a stationery store and a florist, given the amount of thank you cards and flowers that were being sent down to clients to her. That was my training. Beside, now, she hadn't worked in real estate either, but she's an inspiration. Just, you know, she sets her goals. She knows what she wants. But what comes most is that if she says she's going to do something for a client, there is no compromising on that. Hell or high water, she's going to do that, because her integrity and her word stand above all else. There's no compromising on that. So when you're married to somebody like that, and who is strong, you know, how do you know it's going to work? What kind of faith? I honestly believe, I told you during the week, unfortunately my mum passed away in 1996. I was 25 at the time, and I have a very strong faith, that she's orchestrated me meeting my wife. She has orchestrated things to happen at different junctures in my life, to step away from a family business and open up a real estate agency. When somebody that was coming in as a silent partner, after jumping in here and opening up the real estate agency, pulled out of it before we got going, you know, maybe the best thing was that he did pull out of it. Maybe I wouldn't have opened up if he didn't say, yes, let's do this at the time. Maybe we wouldn't have gone in, because we would have been afraid. So at different points, at different times, you've had different people come in and, yeah, this is the right thing to do. Okay, I'm doing it. Things change, challenges arise, and you just get over them. You just got to believe. I think that's the biggest thing.
I think that's the attitude that's contagious, Fintan, from what you're saying.
And as I said, I've got my mum up there looking down on me, and she's never going to let her little brown-eyed boy down. She's never going to do that. So it's not a I don't know. It's not an arrogance, but it's just faith. You mentioned the word faith. Well, I believe strongly in that, and I think without faith or belief, you're starting a race running up a hill.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Like, you make me think. I'll reflect on my own situation. I also have a beautiful wife, Monica, and you know, she has dedicated herself in a way to be, I would call her a professional mom, to take care of the 4 boys, no matter where we were, no matter what country, doing whatever. And the idea of, you know, maybe they do different things, but the idea of having a strong partner is really helpful. And I wouldn't say helpful, it's necessary to be able to do things like this. I think it's, you know, without it, I don't think it could happen.
Oh, listen, it's essential. And with a family business, you've always, you know, the meaning of grafting. You know, if you have to work 7 days a week, you work 7 days a week. I saw my parents with multiple businesses, entrepreneurs. You know, their work ethic was extraordinary. So I grew up in that environment. So coming over here, where, you know, I think what helped when we came over here was that when I had to go out there and work long days or 20 days in a row, I was married to somebody who understood the industry. They understood what it took, that never questioned, are you home early tonight? Like, I'm after coming home, whatever time I left the office at 9 o'clock this evening. I hadn't made a call. I rang when I was leaving the office home. She knows that I'm in the office and working. There's none, are you coming home for dinner? Are you coming home for this? There's none of that. There's an understanding that what we do does not have regular hours. And
Sure.
I think that's it. It's understanding, and the fact that we worked alongside each other for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I know there was times there where when we were opening up our business, I was leaving the office to go down to the rugby club at 6:30, 7 o'clock to coach one of the teams.
Yeah.
Leaving Bronnie behind in the office. I would get home from training and be home in the house before she'd leave the office. And that's you can only admire that.
Sure.
And she would not leave the office because she was saying, I told the client I'd have that valuation back at their house tonight. And there could be 3 or 4 valuations that she'd be going around the estate, dropping that through their letterbox, delivering it to them so that they would have that. Because you're only, in any business, you're only as good as your word.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you had me. I suppose you had me. I wrote something on words there. It's actually a post I put last week. How strong is your word? And literally everything depends on that, Fintan. And when I found that either when I lacked in my word or somebody I was working with or even had a personal relationship did, things come apart or they get better depending on, how strong your word is. I found that's what I found a little bit difficult. And this is where I'm a bit curious to maybe you could give the viewers some insight. Like, I've worked in Switzerland where if you're not early, you're late. You know what I mean? If you're not 5 minutes early. In Ireland, you're a little bit late, and in Dubai, you might be an hour late. I'm not sure what it is, but your word in each culture has a different significance in terms of time and other things like that. So, let me give you a little bit of my background. I have a few friends. I've been to Dubai once, Abu Dhabi and Doha, that sort of area. I had one friend who bought a house off plan, I think 15 years ago, guy from Mayo. He's there now at the moment. I think he works with Emirates. And so that was a success story. He sort of, saved up in Ireland, bought an apartment, then he eventually moved over there and loved it. But that's my stereotype of Dubai. At least it's the old version of it. People who sort of said, okay, well, I'll do something for my older age or my retirement. I'll set myself up so I'll have in Dubai. Yeah. Dubai's changed a lot over the past few years. And I don't even, a long time since I was even there. Maybe you could give an insight into what's Dubai like now? And then even this year, probably a lot of more things have changed. What do you think most people's perception is, and what's the reality? Since you've been there the last 5 years, you're up to date on what that reality is,
I think it takes time to actually get to know Dubai and what it offers for families and the opportunities it presents for people. Start with the perception. If you were to read the Daily Mail and tabloids, they'd think Dubai is glitz and glam and full of Z-list celebrities coming over here to escape lockdown.
Yeah.
And there is an element that it is. There's beautiful weather. The sun is shining. The skies are blue. You rarely get a grey day in the year. Temperatures are hot, but waking up to a blue sky is a lot better than grey. So a lot of people will come here. Coming here when I came here first, I remember talking to Bronnie. I said, in the mall, can we hold hands? And is there personal displays of affection? And when you get here, that was like, God, I can't even hold her hand. We're walking through the mall. What do you wear? Does Ronnie have to cover her shoulders? Blah blah blah. I think the first thing is you begin to realize here, this is a Muslim country, but there's 92% expat, and they come from all around the world. Mm-hmm. And it is a country that is there's a lot of foresight. there is a vision, they know where they're going, and they will get there. So there's great leadership. There is tolerance. Okay. So as I said, Fen is growing up. A funny story, we'd been over here a short time, and Fen was singing a song in the back of the car, and we're driving down Shakeside Road. And I said, what song is that? She sung about 3 times, and she said, that's our national anthem. And I was going,
of Dubai.
That's not our national, so it was the UAE national anthem, right? So she's
Okay,
5 years old singing this. And I'm like, that's not our national anthem, man. And she goes,
Not she,
Daddy,
Nafina.
no, Sheena Fina Fall, but she said, I said, I'll teach you the national anthem. She goes, but ours is a little bit boring compared to this one. And I was like, listen, we'll teach it to you. Anyway, a few minutes later, she pops up in the back of the car. But Dad, I'm not Irish anymore. I'm like,
Oh.
God. So if you're not Irish, what are you? And she goes, I'm Dubai-Irish.
Irish, very good.
So
It's true.
all of a sudden, she sees herself, right, as she has the relationships with everyone at home, but she sees herself as living in a place that's safe.
Yeah.
Again, here's a bubble. When we go home, we've got to teach her that this is not the real world. The environment here is, you ask about what Dubai is, it is so safe, okay? There is a zero tolerance, okay? And I think there could be lessons learned. What people will have a perception of is, if you steal something, are you going to get your hand cut off? No, it's not like that at all. But people obey the law. People realize that, there's a certain way to act, and there's a certain way you're going to get into trouble if you act that way. You've got to be respectful. We are, at the end of the day, in somebody else's country. There are customs and values. And in the same way that they are accepting that the people that come here to choose Dubai as their home, they give them the opportunity to practice whatever religion you want. Okay. Okay, you go down to the mall. Some people are more respectful of the customs. You go down to a mall, you don't have to cover it. There'll be a sign, be respectful, cover your shoulders. Not so many people do. It's not mandatory. You're not going to get in trouble. If you go into a government building, they'll say cover your knees. Now, it is a government building, and they expect you to cover your shoulders and your knees when you're in the government building. But outside of certain areas, I would say it's very tolerant. For families that have chosen to live here, it is very safe. For people that see here as an opportunity to better themselves, in not just in terms of job, but life experience. There isn't, once you get sponsorship, there isn't visa issues like in other parts of the world. If you want to get to Australia or Canada or the States, and when you think about it, when you're English speaking, there isn't too many places in the world that you've moved around with work, but there isn't as many opportunities of places to go that are English speaking countries as you may think. And without a degree or without a company being willing to sponsor you because you've got special talents, so you're quite restricted. And what I think with Dubai here is it's very forward thinking. They have a vision of where they want to go to, and they actually realize the only way we can do this is by people growing the population. So how do we do that? We have to provide an environment here that people can hear that want to come here. They want to attract the best talents. There's now a new visa program for scientists, engineers, people with special talents. They've opened up for student visas. The student visa that comes here to study can now sponsor their family. They want to retain people. So now my clients that I met this morning, they're actually availing of a retirement visa. Rita's from Ireland, Rosalie is from Malaysia. They have family in the UK. They don't want to leave Dubai. They've been here for 20 plus years. Dubai is their home. Since the retirement visa has come in, now they can see here living longer and staying here longer. There's changes to company. There's the Expo 2020 coming up. Well, in October in 21, it was postponed. And we took a visit out there yesterday, and to see the innovation. I mean, you're walking into the place. There's just one pavilion open, just to give a flavor of what is going to be on show.
Yeah.
Dubai will put on the best. Dubai will put on the best show because it can and it will, and it wants to attract corporates to come here. It wants to attract foreign investment here, and strategically in the world, India's a couple of hours away. Israel now is a couple of hours away, which is opening up. Strategically within the world, it's a fantastic place for people from around the world to come here and call Dubai home.
So I work in the tech industry a lot, and a lot of people I work with now are availing because of COVID, which is a special case, Fintan.
Yeah.
These working remotely type situations. So I've heard that Dubai has an offering, Bahamas has an offering, Thailand, different places now are allowing people to work remotely. What does that incorporate? Because that's potentially bringing in a very energetic young population, you know, and once they get a taste of what you're talking about, if it's so safe and there's so many things to do, that could be very attractive. So what's going on in that department, Fintan?
Well, a great example, the couple I met this morning, Rosalie and Rita, their children were in the UK, and one of them is working for the UK government on a project. One is a lawyer, one is a teacher. The daughter who's a teacher has come over here and was doing teaching online because the schools were in lockdown, and she got permission to. Since she's been here, she's actually got a job in a school here. She doesn't want to go back to the UK because now she's able to get out. If she wants to go for a walk, or they go to the beach, or just the freedom that a lot of people in countries at the moment in lockdown are being held captive in their homes. Okay, the son has got permission as well. He can, you know, for him, he's a young guy in his 20s. He got permission to come here and avail of the remote working opportunity. So he's availed of that visa. To avail of that visa, you had to have 5,000 and a salary of $5,000. That was the criteria. There was some other criteria, but they extended, I think it was 3 or 6 months, without having to be sponsored by a company here. For him, I know I've got nephews in London. They're working from home, and Jack said to me, I sent a message. He says, his birthday's coming up. He says, this will be my second birthday that I've spent at home. And for a young guy who's 25, who wants to be out with his mates and having fun and playing football, it's 2 years in a young guy's life, is 2 birthdays in a young man's life, is a lot of time in his, you know, he hasn't been out with his friends.
Absolutely.
The other daughter of that family is a lawyer. He's also coming over, and when they're here, okay, there's a couple of things too. They will see the lifestyle. They'll see how safe it is. If they want to be here as a base to travel to different areas of the world when we can travel safely again, here's a great place to do it from. The icing on the cake is there's no income tax, so the earnings gives them that opportunity. There's very few places in the world that will give them that. They can save money to get a deposit, to buy a home, and benefit of having the experience of meeting so many cultures and friends from around the world. That's one thing that strikes me. You can go out and you'll see people from around the world like we have now. We've got great friends from different places we would never have met that are amongst our tightest friends.
Yeah. Oh, it's, you know, I think that's fantastic. I have a thought, Fintan, from your whole story, which I really love, is if you could go back and talk to that 15 or 16 year, and in a way you've already given the answer, you've almost spoiled it with the school project. If you could give one word of advice or one piece of advice to the 16-year-old Fintan before he started his journey, you want to? Were you? You're probably happy with what happened, but if you had one piece of advice, what might it be, Fintan?
Trust your gut.
Yeah.
If it doesn't feel right, it's not. If it doesn't feel right, it's not right.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I think if you're comfortable, it's time to reevaluate where you're at. Because you've only got one shot at life, and when an opportunity presents itself, you got to take it. And over those years, because I was comfortable, probably didn't do things that I should have done. Didn't push myself enough in things, and that whether that's in sport or whether that's in whatever,
Yeah.
you just kind of got set. It's very easy to just get set in a routine and set in your ways, and then life takes over, and before you know it, a decade is gone. So I suppose back then it would have been a case of, um, get to know what you really love.
Yeah.
I look back and I look at some of the, doing accounting and finance degree for 4 years that I persevered with. I was like going, why? I would, to be honest with you, I mean, Gary Vee is out there and he's very much an advocate against, getting into debt for your university education that you end up paying for decades to follow.
Oh, big loan. Yeah.
Do you know what I would have been better off? I would have been better off probably not finishing. I'm not the most academic person in the world. Not doing that accountancy and finance degree, going out there, exploring the world, finding myself. That sounds finding yourself. That sounds very cliche, but getting to know yourself and
Yes.
finding something that truly makes you happy. Because go back to that thing. If you're happy doing something that you really love, it's never work. I walk in here at 9 o'clock tonight, and I'm delighted with the guys that have done deals today, and it doesn't feel like work. It really doesn't. Meeting my clients this morning, how can sitting down, having a cup of tea, carrot cake, advising clients, and having a social encounter with them, how can that be defined as work? But that's what I've found in my life.
Fantastic work, depending on the carrot
Yeah,
cake.
brilliant. Yeah.
Well, what I'd like to say, Fintan, thank you very, very much for your time and sharing your story. I'd also like to say that, at the bottom of this, I'll put Fintan's contacts because he's on Facebook, he's on LinkedIn and other places. And if you want to contact him, you're interested, go ahead, Fintan.
I was going to say Instagram is where I am. I'm getting down with the kids on Instagram.
Oh, excellent.
Dubaiproperty.fintan. So that's where I'm connecting with a lot of people now. Instagram, really.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, we were probably of the older generation. I have one of them now as well. Let's start to use it more and more,
Well, when you mentioned that, was it a Commodore that you mentioned earlier? You showed your age when you mentioned that earlier.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's the case. That's probably in a museum somewhere now, Fintan.
It'd be worth a few pennies.
I'm not sure about that, but it definitely would be a lot of dust over it for sure. Well, I want to say thank you very much for your company, Fintan. It's been a pleasure to have a conversation and sharing your story with people about, taking that step, going forward, searching for your dream, and it's a lifelong thing. And it's been a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, well, listen, it's so good meeting and chatting with you again over the last couple of weeks, and keep doing what you're doing, inspiring people out there, and it's great work that you do as well. So thank you for asking me on today.
All right. Take care, Fintan.
All right.